Now, how do we stimulate these cells to allow those sodium and potassium ions to move across and thereby change the overall membrane potential? Well, we stimulate it by opening those channels that we've been talking about and that we talked about early on in the membrane and how things can get across. You have to have channels that are going to allow certain molecules across in order to have changes. These ion channels exist in two forms. They exist as ligand-gated and they exist as voltage-gated. What this means is that the ligand-gated requires a ligand. It requires a molecule to bind in order to open up. And we have this example here in this pink membrane. Something binds, a molecule binds, and it will flip open the gate. That's an example of ligand-gated. Voltage-gated requires a certain membrane potential change. So it requires a change, delta, I'm going to use delta for shorthand as change. So it requires a change in the membrane potential. When a certain membrane potential is reached, that will cause, we can just say that this is a voltage. They're very different, but we can say this one is voltage gated. And so once it reaches a certain voltage, then this one will pop open. So we have these two different types of ion channels that are gated that will only open under certain conditions. Now, we just got through talking about acetylcholine being released from the axon terminal at a neuromuscular junction. What happens with acetylcholine is it travels across the synaptic cleft and it binds the ligand-gated sodium channels on the postsynaptic membrane. So those ligand-gated channels are on the postsynaptic side of the NMJ. Postsynaptic. So when the neuromuscular junction is exposed to acetylcholine, then the acetylcholine will bind those receptors, those ligand-gated channels, and then those channels will open up and they will allow an ion through, in this case specifically sodium. I told you that the resting membrane potential when a cell is not stimulated is negative 65 millivolts. I do not like how the spacing turned out because here's your negative over here, but it is negative 65. Now, we talked about the depolarization that occurs in the axon terminal that allows the calcium to come in and allows for vesicle release. And then when the acetylcholine binds the receptors on the postsynaptic side, then there's also going to be a depolarization on the sarcolemma. What is meant then by this depolarization is ions are coming in, and specifically sodium will come in most cases, and that sodium carries what with it? It carries a positive charge. So you get such an influx of sodium that it changes the overall membrane potential to become more positive. It can become a positive number, so say plus 20 millivolts, or it can just be more positive than negative 65. So it could be negative 35, negative 20. But the whole point is that by allowing these positive ions to come into the cell, you are bringing positive charges, and those positive charges will change that difference across the membrane and depolarize it, making it more positive. If you have questions about this, please contact me. Let's have a meeting. This is a really important concept that you will need for the rest of the semester, especially when we dive into the nervous system.